Welcome to Getting Coordination Under Key and Lock, presented by Mehret, Vice President of Digital Products at Visa, and Eliane Coudoro, CRM Manager at FARFETCH. Eliane and Mehret, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mehret. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our session on getting coordination under lock and key. My name's Mehret Habteab, and I work as the Vice President for Digital Products at Visa Europe. I'm responsible at Visa for the successful delivery and commercialization and the growth, really, of our digital solutions. And that includes contactless, e-commerce, security, risk and identity solutions. And I work across UK and the continent. So Eliane and I promise to leave you with the practical tips on collaboration that's been guaranteed, certainly for us, to work when we've been delivering at scale. So Eliane, over to you for some intros.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eliane. I'm working at FARFETCH as a CRM manager. I've worked in different industries across fitness and health, fintech, and now fashion tech. At FARFETCH, I'm overviewing my own team at the moment. So I'm mainly responsible for the strategical and operative delivery of data-driven communication. So my remit includes projects such as working with the data science team to include or to work on new algorithms to improve targeting, or day-to-day tasks such as the delivery of a sale calendar. And for that, I also collaborate with a lot of wider teams. So on a daily basis, I collaborate with my team, but also various wider teams.
Great. Yeah. Eliane, do you want to take the floor on the why? Why is collaboration important?
Yeah, exactly. So I want to kick off and share why it's important to design a culture of collaboration. And it starts with your mindset. But to kind of dig deeper there, I want to kick off with the question of what does it mean? What does it mean to collaborate? What's the meaning of it? And it means the action of collaborating with someone on something. What's the meaning of cooperation? It means the action of working together to the same end. So the emphasis here is with and together. So you're working with your team and the wider teams, you are working together. So I think every project and working process should be kicked off with the understanding that this is and will be a team effort. So you need all the wider teams and your teammates to achieve your goals. So their input matters. So I think that it's very important to give everyone a voice, give them room for feedback, but also give them credit for their input.
Thanks, Eliane. And culture really matters, really, because that's essential for effective collaboration in organizations. But before we get into culture and how to sort of design and use the right frameworks for cooperating with others, we'll just spend a few moments to cover our experiences and share with you how we've learned to and how we collaborate in our organizations currently, just so you have that context. So I've been delivering large critical business solutions for about 20 years now in the financial services and the technology sector, often fairly complex change with multidisciplinary teams across organizations. And the teams that I lead today at Visa Europe are responsible for our digital business. And they've got to work, as Eliane said, together and with a number of other folks across our business. So they work with global product development teams. They work with in-market sales engineers that cover 26 markets. My teams are responsible also for all of our sales and marketing collateral and training. So they work with product marketing and business development. They also work with strategic clients on some of their problems and how we solve this. And not last but not least, also operations in terms of the execution of implementation projects and support for clients. So we have to manage a lot of coordination and collaboration to achieve our objectives and to hit our targets. And when you're managing a large network with many different ecosystem actors and a complex business internally, having the right culture and the right approach to coordinating so that you're working with and together with others is key. Eliane, why don't you share a little bit about your experience and then we'll get into the how.
Yeah, so I've been on both sides, on being a stakeholder for a project or ongoing tasks, as well as being the contributor to a project. And for me, one of the things that always stand out the most is the importance of appreciation. So I think that no one likes to work on a project or task, and I guess that applies to everything in life, if they don't feel appreciated. For example, I had a stakeholder who used to make requests to my department as if we would work for them. At least that's how it felt on our end. And that caused a lot of frustration on our side and within our team. Obviously wasn't beneficial for the working relationship, etc. So now I'm always trying to ensure that everyone I work with, in regard, even if it's my team or wider teams, that they feel acknowledged and appreciated for their hard work and contribution. So I think that's definitely one of the things that is the most important to me in my personal experience.
Thanks, Eliane. And guys, just be sure to use the chat and the Q&A to let us know what you think, questions you've got, comments as we go along, and we'll try and pick them up certainly as we go along and definitely at the end. So as Eliane was kind of highlighting there, motivation is key when you're mobilizing change. And it really, it takes more than unveiling a grand vision to motivate people. I mean, that vision can be really exciting, but it's about more than that. And I don't know about you, but I've been to really amazing talks by business leaders, and I'm sure you have, where some grand vision is unveiled. Everybody feels excited, very good about themselves, and then nothing happens, or it does, but it's not as exciting as the vision that was unveiled. So there can be a lot of excitement and sort of buy-in at the start, but it takes more than that, and it takes more than declaring a high priority goal and vision to make something happen in reality. And really, when you're trying to set that right culture, it's really important that leaders create the right atmosphere for collaboration and cooperation. It's not enough to declare a goal or a high priority sort of company goal and vision, and then just sit back and wait to get input from others, request their inputs, or use hierarchy to order input from others. It's essential that you make people feel like they're working with you and that you're executing together. And sometimes that means ceding control. So, that culture is really important, setting that right atmosphere and being prepared to cede some control. The second thing is that, remember, just because something is high priority for you, maybe high priority even for your organization, it doesn't mean that it's high priority for the individuals and the teams involved, because they're motivated and then they're incentivized in other ways. So another really key thing to think about is how you align incentives. There's always an opportunity when you're working with others to understand what's important for them, and given the investments that they'll be making in working with you, understand how you can support their broader goals. Flex a little bit, don't lose sight of what you need to achieve. Flex a little bit in order to incorporate other things that are there for the greater good. And then the last point I'll make here about culture is it's important that all involved teams and individuals have a voice. Failure often occurs when we don't have an inclusive setup. So a culture of feedback and inclusive engagement is really key. And your role as leaders is about making sure that people are listened to and that they're able to raise their concerns. You may not like that because that might seem like you've got something to deal with, but it's essential to address the roadblocks. And that's really key because you need to bring everyone along with you on that journey. So important elements of culture: create that right atmosphere for collaboration and cooperation. Know that what's important to you isn't always naturally important to everyone else. You have to align incentives and bring others along with you, and be prepared to listen and address those roadblocks. So Eliane, why don't you take it away on the main factors there?
Thank you for that. Very important point. So Mehret and I thought about the guidelines that we use to design a culture of collaboration, and that will help you to assist one. So at the very beginning of every collaboration, so there is a project. And I think, as she already mentioned shortly, is that when you kick off, you need to kick off with internal project planning. So you need to be very clear of the vision and goals that you have. What are your vision and goals? Also understand what are the targets of your department, which measures and initiatives bring you to that target, and also understand the long-term implementation, but also prioritize within your department. And that's really important, because once you go to the wider teams and try to share your vision, you need to be very clear of the process and steps that you have in mind. And generally, everyone should be very clear on, okay, what's the meaning of this project? Where do we want to go with this? So it's very important that you're internally very clear how you want to establish your vision and what are the projects in detail. Once you have that sorted within your team, then you can kick off the roadmap planning. But the roadmap planning should also happen in collaboration with the wider teams, because only the wider teams will be able to let you know what's the complexity versus impact, because they will know on their side the task that they're executing, what's the actually the complexity, what's the required and available capacity of the task that they're executing. So that's a very important part to collaborate with them, is the roadmap planning. And then before you start briefing projects in, you should have a kickoff meeting with everyone involved. So managers, access, assistants, head-offs. And that's very important to then again make sure that everyone understands the goal, the process, but also gives the chance to ask any unanswered questions. And then also, as just slightly mentioned, but a very essential part is the creation of a very clear and detailed briefing. A clear and detailed briefing will ensure not just an efficient and smooth process, but also really avoids this back and forth that can be very time consuming, and avoids any delays of any wrong delivery of tasks, but also just mainly avoids any frustration. And a very clear brief also makes sure that the capacity and time of all the teams is respected. So I think that's very important to acknowledge that that is also the main function of the brief. And the kickoff meeting that you have before that should also be used to outline the details that should be in the brief. Once you have the brief done, you briefed it, then it's important that when you kick off the project process, to have regular check-ins with all the involved teams and team members to make sure that the deadlines are still on track, still being met. Are there any blockers? Is everyone still on the same page? So that's quite important as well. But then also make sure you have a quality check before you launch any project or launch any new working process, because obviously after you spend so much time and sometimes months working on a project, you don't want it to fail because there was no quality check. So that's very important step there too. And obviously also ensures that you always deliver on your highest standard. And then obviously once that's all done, it's launched, all good, then you will need to continue to monitor the projects and share updates, regular updates. So continue to communicate with the stakeholders and involved teams. And then a very important one as well is once you share the results, also make sure to quickly come back to the point that I made earlier around appreciation, that you share the credit with the involved and executing teams. So just to remember here again, the reason why your project was successful is also because of the contribution of all the wider teams and your teammates. So make sure that you acknowledge that when you share the results. And so everything that I just mentioned are very practical guidelines, but I think the real tipping point for designing a culture of that truly feels like collaborative is triggered by soft skills and the values around it. So be approachable, be a strong communicator that continues to seek feedback from everyone involved, be inclusive, encourage idea sharing. I think online you can find loads and loads of information about values, around values of collaboration. So I encourage everyone who is interested to deep dive dive deeper into it, to have a look. And I guess the last point that I want to make that is also very essential and important is building working relationships. So everyone prefers to work with teams and team members that they know and that they trust or have some sort of relationship with, so that it can truly feel like a collaboration rather than just the exchange of skills. So there I would also always make sure that this is not neglected. This is really essential for collaborating with other teams or just with your team. And obviously then there are also a lot of tools that help you to collaborate with your team and wider teams and just make it all a bit more smoothly. So the first thing I would make sure that you agree on communication channels. Obviously you have Slack, you have Teams, create individual chats for the project or day-to-day work you're working off with several people, wider teams. You can have or use project management tools to manage your projects and working progress, such as Asana, Monday.com, Trello, Jira, all of them. And then also the usual suspects, all the docs and the docs and folders that you can share with other ones, such as Google Slides, Google Sheets, and just Google Drive. So I think they're also always super helpful to make collaborations a bit more easier. So that's the guidelines that we wanted to share with you guys.
Thanks, Eliane. I love that sort of practical guidelines and then remembering some of the cultural elements there. So we're going to wrap up in a second. I just want to remind you, and we'll start to take your questions. So please do bring them in, and also just comments, right? Feedback. Wanted to remind you of the 3 things that we wanted you to take away from this talk. So first off, it's really important as a leader that you're fostering the right culture for active collaboration. You as a leader need to bring that learning and growth mindset to the team in order to maximize collaboration. And remember, your role as a leader is to facilitate that collaboration. Be prepared to cede control in order to address good ideas, additional objectives, address concerns. Really important to get that right culture. It's not about controlling the path to the end. It's about making sure you're facilitating and bringing others with you. And then really important, some of those guidelines that Eliane was talking through. Planning an organization, particularly when it's complex change, is key to success. As Eliane was setting out, the roles and responsibilities, clear roadmaps and plans, transparent record of progress, the right tools to support all of that is key to maximizing the productivity of large teams and to get everybody on the same page. And it also demonstrates respect for your colleagues and the time and their input that they're giving to endeavors. So that's really key. And then the last point that we want to sort of emphasize again is partnership and true inclusion. If you really want lasting change, not just getting to the end like it's a race, but you want lasting change that really transforms and delivers on the goals that you've been set, and you can hang your hat and say we've got success. It's really important to develop those strong bonds and to listen to your partners and be prepared to act on their advice. That's really key. So that's what we had for you. I see that there are some questions sort of coming up. I'll start to take those. Eliane, there's a question here about well-defined processes and rules and whether they encourage or hinder collaboration. I'd love your perspective on that first.
Yeah, I think definitely it's very essential and important that you do have a framework. But for example, I work at FARFETCH. We're super reactive and we're a very fast-paced environment, which means that continuously things are changing. So I think it's still important, while you do need a working process in place, while you do need a framework for your project, to always make sure, does it still make sense? Does it still apply to the new change that might occurred recently? So I think you definitely need it in place, but you also need to regularly check if that's still the best process and approach. So yeah, I would that would be my.
Yeah, I concur with that. In fact, I was having a conversation with someone last night when we were looking at a new process for one of our large operational areas, and they said, is it too prescriptive? And I said, well, you have to set some sort of frameworks, but actually, judgment matters. It's really important to have good judgment and to remain flexible because things change. We've got another one here about how much influence do you think one person can have on creating the right culture if others around them are not interested? That's a really tough one. Have you ever found that situation, Eliane?
No, but I can definitely agree that, or I can definitely say that I personally think that one person who really drives that collaborative mindset can make a huge difference. I think for me, it's hard to imagine anyway why someone doesn't want to have that collaborative mindset, because that means that probably a person who usually just works by themselves. But I think for me, there are much more benefits, and I think it makes work much easier. So it's honestly hard for me to imagine that someone would be proactively trying to, not be collaborative. I think it's maybe more people that maybe need to be encouraged. But I think as soon as you see the impact of, that collaborative mindset, that you would also want to kind of get on the same road with them. But yeah, I think definitely would say that one person can make a huge difference. And I could see that. I could see it the other way around. If someone doesn't have that collaborative mindset, but is, for example, the manager or the head of a department, how that can also negatively impact the overall atmosphere. So I definitely think that one person can make a huge change there.
Yeah, I think as you were talking, two things were coming to mind there. One was what Michelle Obama says, when they go low, you go high.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think there's something about, leadership and what leadership is. Leadership isn't about hierarchy. It's about exemplar behaviors in this space. And I think if you hold, to whoever posted that question, if you hold on to those values, then your environment might change, but keep them with you. It's really important. And a good one here, actually, building strong relationships when primarily working from home, which is something most of us have had to do during the pandemic. Eliane, do you want to kick us off again on that?
Yeah, I think obviously it's quite easy to kind of neglect that when you just working from home. And I personally, for example, I'm in a lot of meetings. I feel like I spent the last 1.5 years on a video call, basically. But I think it's still essential to make sure to, if you are in a meeting, have some informal chats. For example, what we do at FARFETCH every week, once a week for 30 minutes. We have these random chats with someone in the marketing team. So it's being by the PA of the marketing team. She's always matching someone randomly with you, so you can have a 30-minute catch up. And I think that's super helpful to, still being more or less forced or reminded every week, let's also not just talk about work 8 hours a day, but, just have a chat, catch up. And build those relationships. I think also you can still have some informal catch up online with some of the teams. Doesn't mean that it has to be like an online quiz, but sometimes I think brainstorming sessions or just have sessions that are not about what we need to do next, but how can we work better. I think that always feels like strengthening the working relationship. So I think that's always super helpful.
Yeah, I think this is essential. Building strong relationships in the new sort of working mode, and making the time for it to not always be about work. I think many organizations and folks have got into the habit of having those back-to-back task-focused sort of meetings. It's okay to have the get-to-know-you type conversations as meetings when working from home, and if you can, actually, that face-to-face contact, even if it's for once every so often, does help. If you're able to. There's one here about working with teams that are difficult to get along with. I might start there just because I've had often we have to find ourselves working with various parts of a large organization, and whether it's internally or externally, there's friction when there's complexity, and I always try to remind my teams of that, right? We always see things from our perspective, And sometimes the friction comes from the complexities that other teams are managing, and you're trying to align incentives. So one of the things that I do personally is I try to spend time to understand what's going on for those teams. So and I don't always work at the top. I'll work at the top and, you know, across the different levels in the team, just to understand, you know, what's happening, you know, what are the challenges within your team. I bet, you know, conversations like I see that you're getting it from all ends in terms of the impact to your team. How can we help? How can we work better with you? Because I think most individuals and most humans, I think, have in us the desire to get along with others and to do good work. And I think if you can tap into that, which might take a lot of effort on your part, it's a worthwhile investment, because you do build those lasting relationships. Would you agree, Eliane?
No, I definitely 100% agree. In my experience, most of the time, if teams get difficult, then it's mostly caused by misunderstandings, misalignment within briefs, or just generally not being fully clear of what we're trying to achieve, but also then they feel like we're not acknowledging what their capacity is or what they have to deal with. So as you mentioned, I think it's always helpful then to proactively say, okay, let's sit down. What are the pain points in our collaboration currently? How can we smooth it out? How can we solve it? But also, I think sometimes it's just really important to give context. And even if you work with teams that are more on the executional side, that to still include them fully into the vision and give them an idea. Why, for example, often I think the frustration comes if you do a lot of short notice requests that actually usually require a longer period to prepare. And if they then feel, okay, actually, why is this necessary now? And they feel it's unnecessary and puts unnecessary pressure on their team, then often that can be resolved by, you know, having a clear communication, tell them, why do you need that? Why is it important? But also just, yeah, as you mentioned, proactively, also not just say, okay, this is what I want, but how can we make it easier for you as well? So I think it's a give and take, but I think communication is key here and solves a lot of problems for sure.
Thanks, Eliane. There's just one we haven't addressed, but we may have, but I'll pick it up anyway, which is around what does one do when they find themselves under leadership that's not great at collaborating, and how do they drive the culture, because they have the ability to, without stepping on others' toes.
Yeah.
Do you want to take that one, Eliane?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it depends on the overall dynamic and how closely you still need to work with them and how closely that person determines basically what you guys, what are the projects you're taking on and how you approach them. But obviously, I guess the first step would be there, I think, to seek a conversation with the person, not saying, I think you're not doing it right, but more say, oh, you know, I thought about maybe that would be helpful to approach it this way. So come more from that side rather than, you know, be giving negative feedback, but more because you identified as a problem here. So instead of criticizing the problem solely, come with a solution and say, I think it would be super helpful if we do it this way and that way. And then maybe that works. But I guess that would be my main recommendation, kind of seek a proactive conversation.
Yeah, that's
and maybe
excellent.
get other team members on board, like see how other team members feel, or wider teams, maybe not wider teams if it's your manager, but other team members, do they feel the same? So kind of align a bit there, and, you know, then come already with a solution when you address the problem.
Yeah, so some people find themselves in leadership positions because of their technical kind of abilities, and it doesn't naturally come to them. I often find with such individuals, I think they are looking for solutions, and if you come with the right intent and sort of some of the practical advice that Eliane gave, it can help to. It can help them. It can help you have success as a team. So I'd be brave and just kind of come with the right intent, and all should hopefully fall in place. And if it doesn't work out, you've tried, right? I think no one can take issue with individuals that come with the right intent in order to drive things forward, and you can talk it out
Yeah.
always. Well, I think we've covered most of the questions, and thank you very much to the audience for these great questions.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I wanted to say massive thanks to Eliane. I've really enjoyed
Yeah.
getting to know you through this
Thank you.
process, and also working on this with you. We've been able to put some of the learnings that we've shared into practice between us, even
Yes.
in sharing our knowledge with you. Yeah, and for those of you that have dialed in, thank you so much. Eliane, any parting words from you?
Yeah, no, also thank you so much to you. That was super fun and exciting. So I'm very happy that this session happened and that we were matched. And thank you everyone in the audience. That was those were really a few good questions. But yeah, so thank you very much. This was super fun.
Enjoy the rest of your conference, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.